Good morning and good Sunday. I hope that this new day finds you well. Is the sound loud enough? Can you hear me? Great. Today is Sunday, September the 19th, and the title of this morning's reflection is Wandering in the Desert. It explores the experience of wandering in the forest, in the darkness, in the desert, wherever we find ourselves wandering. There are many different settings. There is a song entitled Wandering by James Taylor, and he writes, "I've been wandering early and late from New York City to the Golden Gate, and I don't look like I'll ever stop my wandering. It's awesome to get hit by leaves while you're preaching. It's awesome." Along a journey of 6 verses, we learn a lot about this man's story, about his life, about his love, about his family. He sings, I've been in the army and I've worked on a farm, and all I've got to show is the muscle in my arm, but it don't look like I'll ever stop my wandering. That's a lot. If what you do changes your body, that's a lot. It's a beautiful life lived. The song makes you kind of wonder if he ever will stop his wandering, if we ever will stop ours. Maybe we're not supposed to stop. Maybe all of this wandering is a good thing somehow. The song itself is a lament, but that doesn't mean that wandering is bad. It means that the author is searching for something, for purpose maybe, for definition, or maybe for meaning in life. The song provides no answers, departs no wisdom, renders no judgment, offers no help, teaches no lesson, does no good. It simply is. And it simply is beautiful. It is the journey of an honest life lived. No needs, neither for praise nor for punishment. Wandering in the Bible is often a consequential experience, usually a costly one. Wandering in the desert is an especially bad kind of penalty. Passages about wandering appear many times throughout the book of Deuteronomy, commonly in Numbers and also in Psalms. Wandering appears in the book of Joshua as well, wherein they mention milk and honey. Milk and honey being among the things that are held off from us when we are wandering in the desert. I feel like we're wandering sometimes as a country, as a culture, or as a set of cultures trying to become a country united and true. I feel this way when I watch the news stories about the COVID culture wars. When I watch the women's gymnastics team call out Larry Nassar and the FBI for dragging its feet in the abuse investigation. When I think about January 6th in Washington, D.C. and the aftermath, sometimes I fear that we're broken somehow, wandering in circles in a sea of dryness. But then I think better of it. Wandering in circles doesn't sound like very much fun. So I stop being so dramatic. I stop being the frantic wild man with a hammer and a dream. I stop for a moment and I grow. I get a little better at the art of life, better at the art of living, and something gently heals in me in love and in humility. I more deeply appreciate the journey. To all souls, I say good morning. It's good to be together on this beautiful Sunday morning. It can be useful. It should, at the very least, be a pleasurable thing. We should all, at the very least, try to play the trumpet, or attempt even once to make a good souffle. Okay. It's good to take a stab at doing something that is difficult, especially when you know that it can actually be done. It's humbling when we discover that we cannot do it well. It might not feel very good at the time, but it engenders humility, and that humility blunts the sharper edges of our lives just a little bit. It wears down the harsh and unsmooth surface of the personality. It keeps us honest. It keeps us grounded. It keeps us true. Real. It keeps us in healthy relationship, humility. Because they make it look so easy when you see it on TV. They make it look easy to be a great artist. To be a great musician, to be an excellent trumpet player, it sure looks like all you have to do is don the right attitude, put on the hip clothes and the sunglasses. That's about half the battle, right? And then all you have to do is take the trumpet out of the case and stick one end, hopefully the right end, in your mouth and blow. And then quite magically something beautiful happens, right? Now, of course, that's not true. We find this out the moment we try to do it the first time, and we sound terrible. And we sound loud, and the instrument is so hard to control, it's embarrassing. I think that's a good thing. It's not true that all one has to do is to don the right attitude. It's not true that all we have to do is take the instrument out of the case and play. It is true, however, that all we have to do is practice. We have to wander in the wilderness of terrible trumpet playing before we can produce a work of art. It takes a lot of time to do things right. But when we put in the time and when we're honest with ourselves, we slowly get better over time. It's just that when we're putting in the time and effort, it feels like we're wandering, that we're lost and alone. And maybe we are. And maybe the point of that feeling is just to keep moving. They make it look so easy on TV, they really do. To be a great chef, to make an excellent souffle, it sure looks like all you have to do is don the right attitude, put on the white hat, the toque blanche, I think they call it, and then whip up the eggs just right. That's half the battle. And then all you have to do is bake it in the oven in that special dish they call a ramekin. They make it look so easy, but it isn't really. Things look easier than they are sometimes. When the poets tell stories of the high-flying man named John, we pay attention because the story is so exciting. John is fearless. John is brave. He's a hang glider. He starts his journey of adventure at the top of a mountain they call Haleakala. Haleakala is a volcano that overlooks a beautiful valley in Hawaii. Haleakala means the house of the sun, and the volcano is central to a legend about a demigod named Maui, like the island, who lassoed the sun from its journey across the sky as he stood at the volcano's summit. He lassoed the sun to slow its descent and make the days last longer. The poetry is beautiful about this song, about making things easy. The bright kite that he's hanging from, John rides a glider above the clouds. And he stepped off Haleakala, 10,000 feet above the ground and high up over the mountain snow. And he rides the air up high and thin. Tell us now, we gotta know. How do you get to where you've been because you make it look easy? Lots of people make their lives look easy, but life isn't easy. The poetry continues. In the second verse, it's the woman who's telling a tale. She doesn't hang glide. She rides the white water and the river waterfall. She's a kayaker. Fun river to run, she says. Class 5 rapids is what she means. And she weaves through the boulders in one thin line with no room to eddy out between. There's a 20-foot high falling wall, and she rides it down like easy fun. And what's the trick to falls that tall? And how do you do the things you've done? Because you make it look easy. Lots of people make life look easy, but it's really not. If you choose a life that leads towards growth, it will be hard. Life is humbling for every one of us in this way. No one is born as a top shelf trumpeter. I thought I was, but then I tried. One takes an adventuresome journey to get to that point. It isn't easy, but it behooves us to try, nevertheless. Whether or not we actually get there, that doesn't matter. And no one is born as a chef in a 5-star restaurant. We are not born at the top of the world. We take journeys to get up there, arduous ones. And all along the way, we are softened and made smooth by the tosses and the turns in life. It's a long process, and it's so important that we not take ourselves too seriously along the way. It's so important to enjoy the process and to enjoy the day, wandering and not speeding toward an agreed upon result. Mindfully, a theologian named Alan Watts, encourages us to slow down and to enjoy life, to enjoy the journey that we're on. Through his teachings, we learn to pause and to listen and to tune in and to take stock of every moment that we can, lightly and softly, as the wind kicks up behind us. Watts explains that the Japanese have a word for this. He says the Japanese have a word, yugien. They describe yugien as watching geese while they fly and be hidden by clouds, as watching a ship vanish behind the distant islands, as wandering on and on in a great forest with no thought of return. Yugien, to watch with ease as the world unfolds with grace and gravity. Yugien, to wander in the great forest with no thought of return. It occurs to me, in the realm of spirit, we spend a lot of time wandering around, wandering in deserts or in forests or whatever have you, really. Watts asks, have you ever done this? And I ask you as well. Have you ever gone for a walk with no particular purpose in mind? You carry a stick with you, occasionally hit at old stumps. You wander along and sometimes twiddle your thumbs. It is at that moment that you are a perfectly rational human being. You've learned purposelessness. All music is purposeless. Is music actually getting somewhere? If the aim of a symphony were to get to the final bar, the best conductors would be the ones who got there the fastest. Alan Watts is so striking and clear. He teaches us how to enjoy the arduous journey. He does not say that we as spiritual seekers need to travel more quickly on our paths and passageways. The adventuresome hang glider in Hawaii is floating like a cloud in the air above the valley. He is already moving at the perfect speed. He does not need the judgment of others to enjoy the miracle. Alan Watts does not say that we should travel more slowly on our paths and passageways. The river rapids runner, the falling water woman, is coursing like quicksilver in the flow. She too is already moving at the perfect speed and does not need the judgment of others. But how is this the case? One seeker travels slowly and the other one and is moving at perfect speed, and the other seeker travels quickly and is moving at the perfect speed. These two speeds are different, and yet they are also perfectly the same. How can they both be perfect in the spirit life of things? In Jonathan Livingston's Seagull, his famous book of 1973, Richard Bach writes about the magical idea that he calls perfect speed. He writes, heaven is not a place and heaven is not a time. Heaven is being perfect, by which he means accepting ourselves. And being perfect isn't flying at 1,000 miles an hour or at 1,000,000 miles an hour, or flying at the speed of light, because any number is a limit, and perfection does not have limits. Perfect speed, my beloved, means being there. We put so much pressure on ourselves sometimes to do things well and quickly. We like to be productive and efficient. Time is money and all of that, but all of that isn't true. Time isn't money and money isn't time, no matter what they try to tell you. When we run out of one before the other, we realize that the saying isn't true. It's cute and everything, but it isn't all that helpful sometimes. Saying time is money means that we are preoccupied with speed. We say money makes the world go round, but money does not do that, really. If money really did make the world go round, we would be able to pay for what we want. We would be able to pay for different speeds, for speeds that better suited our hectic schedules and our busy lives. If we had enough money, we could get the world to stop. Or we could slow it down a little if we could afford it. But money can't stop time from moving. Nothing can. And no one can, no matter how hard we try. I wish we could stop this train, because I want to get off and go home again. and I can't take the speed that it's moving in. I know I can't. But honestly, can't someone stop this train? Clouds, when they do move, do not move slowly or too fast. Rivers, when they do run, do not move too quickly or too slow. It is we who are preoccupied with speed. Alan Watts says, is the music getting anywhere? If the aim of a symphony were to get to the final bar, the best conductors would be the ones who got there the fastest, right? When you dance, you don't aim to arrive in a particular place on the floor. Is that the idea of dancing? No. The aim of dancing is to dance. Alan Watts, I love him. Through his teaching, I learned to pause and to listen and to tune in and to take stock of every moment I can. Otherwise, I become frustrated and I make a big mess of things. And then I find myself alone and wandering in the desert, thirsty and lost and walking around in circles. When I'm frustrated, I lose my humility. I become impatient. I lose respect for time, and I want to be an excellent trumpeter on my very first try. I don't want to put in the effort. I don't want to practice. I don't want to grow. I want to already be good at it. I want to be excellent at making soufflés, but I don't know how to do it just right. And I don't know how to use the ramekin, or whatever that is. You may know this, but a ramekin is a small dish for baking and serving individual portions of food. It's a French word of Low German origin, and it has Flemish roots as well. When I first heard the word, when I first heard people using the word ramekin, I didn't know what it meant. When I first heard the word, I misheard the word. I thought that people were talking about those storefront window puppets, the ones that are all wearing the latest styles in Macy's or Bloomingdale's. I now know that they said ramekin, but at the time I thought they said mannequin. So I was really quite confused. What they were saying didn't seem to make any sense. Who would want, I thought, to make an elegant meal in a mannequin? I hope that you were laughing maybe a little or thinking about it. That makes me happy for you, but for me, the mannequin story is not a pleasant memory. This might sound a little weird, but the mannequin has taught me a thing or two about life. And I'm not alone. The minister that Chris Bartlett quoted at the opening of the service is named Rick Maston. He's a Universalist minister and an old friend of mine. Rick Maston was out in California. He was a wonderful person. He died a few years ago now, pancreatic cancer. I miss the old man, and he'd laugh at me for calling him that. And he'd probably smack me on my shoulder. He was my friend of spirit, genuinely. There aren't many people like that. He wrote a short poem called Encounter that I will share with you now. It captures some of the frustrations that I feel sometimes these days. Maybe you feel them too. Rick Maston writes, "It was just that I was very touchy that day," which is really all that I can say to explain why, while walking through Sears and Roebuck's department store, I happened to get into a fist fight with a mannequin. I promise you that mannequin was looking at me funny. I'm telling you, I'm serious. And then he made that crack about my mother. You know me, man, I just can't be treated like that. It was a bad day, it's over now. We don't have to talk about it. We're moving on. Times are hard right now. It's easy to find ourselves wandering in the desert, alone. We had hoped for something different. We had hoped for autumn safety after a summer of preparation. We had hoped for a return to normal, but we didn't get it. And that doesn't feel very good, but it's part of the way things are right now. And we can meet this challenge. It's easy enough to do. Sometimes it's an arduous journey, but we can make it look easy. High up over the mountain snow, we can ride the air up high and thin, and someone might say, "Tell me now, I've got to know, how do you get to where you've been?" And we can ride the 20-foot high falling wall of water, and we can ride it down like easy fun. And someone might say, "What's the trick to falls that tall, and how do you do the things you've done?" Because we will have made it look easy by putting in the effort, by regular habits of practice, by agreeing to fly at the perfect speed. It might look easy, but really it's driving long distances and grinding into gear, studying the balance, quieting the fear. It's healing from all the hard landings. It's overcoming all the tough breaks. It's learning all of the lessons and making all of the mistakes. That's how we make it look easy. I was listening to the news the other day, and I heard a long list of stories. The women's Olympic team was blasting the FBI about the Larry Nassar case. Occupy Wall Street was in its 10th year, its 10th anniversary. That made me feel really old. The governor, Gavin Newsom, the governor in California, survived a recall effort and handily defeated his opponent by a 2-1 margin. The recall story was the one that really angered me. The recall effort cost Californian taxpayers almost $300 million. It cost a lot of money to say no to a sitting governor, and I'm glad that they were unsuccessful. In his victory speech, Newsom turned all of that around. Can't say no to him, the voters said. Newsom said, I want to focus on what we can say yes to in this state. We said yes to science. We said yes to vaccines. We said yes to ending this pandemic. We said yes to people's right to vote without fear of fake fraud or voter suppression. We said yes to a woman's fundamental and constitutional right to decide for herself what she does with her body, her fate, her future. We said yes to diversity, yes to inclusion, and yes to pluralism. Newsom's opponent had only donned the attitude of excellence. He didn't practice. He didn't practice humility. He was like a wild man with a hammer and a dream. I know, because I've been that way myself. But he was trading on the health of true community. We should say no to this by a margin of 2-1. We are not broken in this world, and we are not at war with one another. We're just a little creaky at the hinges. We know that great decisions are before us, and we know that we don't know how to make them yet. There is a great challenge before us, and it's clear that we are worried about it. But if we soften, we'll get there. We have before. In 1962, when he first began to champion the idea of the space program, President John Kennedy referred to the space program and space exploration as the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked. 7 years later, we landed on the moon. Neil Armstrong said, it's one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind. Things are harder for us now. Things are harder for humankind. They're more complex. It's easier to put a man on the moon than it is for us to realize that our lives are in one another's hands. It's easier for us to put a man on the moon than for us to accept that our lives are in one another's hands when it comes to masking, when it comes to vaccination, when it comes to climate change. We won't all be together. We won't all agree. We never have. But our lives will be in one another's hands. And they've always been. We are not broken. We're just scared, stiff, and a little creaky at the hinges. We're in need of oil, the oil that we once called wisdom. We may treasure it. May we treasure it as it comes to us in its myriad forms, as we find it in the deserts and in the great forests of life. Wisdom comes to us as humility in perfect speed. May we hold one another in grace and in humility as we move forward in life. Together may it be so. Blessed be.